on responsible research assessment policies as a pathway to diamond open access. So I welcome Ashley Fairley for the to chair the session. And also I request, oh, it's written as chair. Sorry, to chair as a convener. And I also request Lydia and Dr. Sumangala to be the rapporteurs for the. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I'm very excited and honored to be able to chair this session. It's a session on responsible research assessment policies as a pathway to diamond open access. I think throughout the past couple of days, it's been very difficult to talk about diamond open access and shifting to a broader diamond open access world without coming across the topic of research assessment and how we need to make sure that research assessment is best aligned with our goals on diamond open access. Could we bring the slide deck up? Thanks. Thank you. And can I invite the speakers that are in the room up to the stage, please? We're going to start the session with a quick round of introductions to each of the speakers. And then my goal is to leave plenty of time for some discussion and then Q&A from the audience. Okay. So our first panelist that we're going to meet is Hank Kumeling, who's the chair of KOARA. Come on up. Get us kicked off.
Get us kicked off. What an introduction. Thank you very much, Ashley. Well, of course, I'm mainly here as the chair of the steering board of KOARA. But it may be useful to know that I, for 7 years, up until last year, I had the honor to be the rector or the vice chancellor, as some of you would say, of Utrecht University, and I was very much busy in making sure that we organized ourselves to transition towards more open science. And now, again, I'm mostly busy with teaching nowadays and also the research in the Netherlands and also in South Africa. But there is still some administrative blood running through my veins. And for example, I'm still a member of the board of the IAU, the International Association of Universities, which published, by the way, quite recently, last week, a position paper on rankings. So very interesting for you perhaps also to take note of. And for that, you can look at the website of IAU, iau.global. And as I said before, my main board time is spent at KOARA. You have heard the term KOARA a lot these days, but for those who are not yet that familiar with the organization, a few introductory remarks about KOARA, the Coalition for Advancing Research Assessment. And by the way, for those who get a bit bored during my short presentation, I recommend you to go to the KOARA website, koara.org. There's all kinds of exciting information there. We, KOARA, are an independent organization that operates internationally. We started in 2022 and we are growing rapidly. Now we have almost 800 members worldwide, all institutions that are engaged in research. And as we were told yesterday afternoon, we are financially supported by the European Commission, but we are certainly not only focused on the European Union. As I mentioned earlier, we are active on a global scale. Our members, well, if they enter the work of KOARA, sign the ARA, the agreement that lies under it, then they enter it to 10 commitments and commit themselves to come up with an action plan within a year in which they make visible how they will implement these obligations. These commitments are on our website and anyone can read them there, but I would like to mention the 4 most important ones And they're also the most obvious ones. First of all, recognize the diverse contributions to research, language, purpose, these kind of things. Secondly, base research assessment on qualitative evaluation. Thirdly, abandon inappropriate uses of journal and metrics-based evaluation. And as a fourth, avoid the use of rankings of research organizations in research assessment. And based on these and other commitments, Kowara is very much focused on reforming research assessment as practically as possible. Not only through these action plans, but also through the establishment of national chapters, and especially through our working groups, which work bottom-up, completely community-driven on practical tools for change. And for organizations that need some extra support for making these transitions, so-called cascade funding is also available with a total budget of almost 30 million euros and with a maximum of 60,000 euros per project. The second call for cascade funding has just been completed, but in the future there will be also resources available for organizations to accelerate their transitions through Kowara cascade funding. And finally, in my introduction, I would like to briefly reflect on the central theme of this summit, also mentioned already before by Ashley. Diamond Open Access and reform of research assessment are very interconnected and interdependent. Diamond Open Access, of course, is also a goal in itself and which contributes a lot to reform. But at the same time, if we don't really steer towards reform of research assessment, if we don't get the incentives in the right direction, then Diamond Open Access will simply not get off the ground either. Responsible research assessment policies are therefore of the utmost importance to achieve the goal we all have in mind. Therefore, I look very much forward to the exchange of views in the panel.
Fantastic. Thank you for setting the stage for us. Could I get the slides to move? Thank you. Okay. Next, I would like to welcome up Momita Cooley, Senior Research Analyst at the DST Center for Policy Research. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Yes. Okay, so, just now, Henk has set the stage up and told why Diamond Open Access and research assessment has to go hand in hand. And for that, I would actually give you some examples that why it's so important that first of all, we need research assessment, and then why Diamond can actually serve the goal or serve the community, the researcher community, what's our need. Okay, so obviously, today I am of course representing the research team in our DST Center for Policy Research, as well as Rory in UK. So we do a lot of research on research assessment, but I'm also serving another role. So I'm the steering group member of DORA, and I will also talk a little bit about DORA as well in the next slide. But let's just go into this slide, which I have put it here, because this is one of the studies that we did in our center in collaboration with CWTS Leiden to understand that the Indian research in the medical and biomedical field in 2015 to 2019 and how they are addressing the country's need, and how do you define country's need was the disease burden. And what did we found is here, so we have the least correlation among our publication with the disease burden that the country is facing. You see it here. For all the other, for example, world, it's much better. High-income country, of course, they do research for what they need. And all the other places, except for, India features so bad. That means we do research about some other diseases, which really not ours. Of course, these are concerned, but maybe not, should not have been our higher priority. But then why do we see this kind of pattern? It's because our research assessment system prioritize where do we publish. So all the high journal impact factor Q1 publications, they want us to do research on certain fields which is more correlated to high income countries because that's where the journals are based. And that's why we see so poor correlation with our own disease burden. And our health research funding is so less, then if we see such kind of misalignment, that's really concerning. That's why we need to have research assessment reform. We should value what matters, not what other region wants us to publish, or journal impact factor, or all such matrices. Okay, yeah. So now coming back to, of course, we need research assessment, and then one of the very earlier principles was DORA declaration, and it talks about that. The first thing is talks about do not use journal-based metrics as your surrogate measure of quality, because that's what we have been doing all the way along, and that's what we are still doing. And of course, we should consider the value and impact and broad range of research outputs, be explicit about the criteria used in hiring, promotion, tenure decision, facilitate openness, and facilitate reuse. These are the principles. Now is the time where we have to translate the principles to action. Of course, just now we heard how QARA is doing, so DORA is also doing a lot of effort in this direction. And this is what of course, we have to again reiterate that this is where the value of Diamond Open Access journals as well, because Diamond Open Access journals are not the profit-driven model. It's for the community, by the community, and free. So here, that prestige and impact factor should not matter. And that is why we need the research assessment reform. And these two movements should go hand in hand together. And with that, I stop my initial remarks.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, next I am excited to welcome up Judith Nadorf, who's the coordinator for Classical FOLEC. And we will be switching to a separate slide deck, if we can find that. Is this? Oh, okay, thanks. So there's an English version floating around somewhere.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. As Ashley says, I'm the coordinator of the Latin American Forum for Research Assessment, FOLEC CLACSO. I am very happy to be here. We are very far from our house, and it's a pleasure to be here. Now I switch, and I will start talking in Spanish, even though you can read it in English. Please put your... This plenary is about responsible research assessment policy as a pathway to Diamond. Voy a hablar sobre la evaluación responsable y el acceso abierto, principalmente sobre nuestro nuevo manifiesto que tiene solo un mes y que fue realizado y escrito por 40 investigadores de toda América Latina. Ustedes ya conocen el manifiesto del año 2022. Este es uno nuevo, actualizado, que se llama el Manifiesto de Bogotá. Esperamos que pronto todos lo conozcan y lo utilicen, así como refieren al Manifiesto de Leiden, a la Declaración de Dora, a los manifiestos de Coara, etc. Este es el manifiesto de América Latina. El manifiesto de Bogotá refiere a estrategias para su implementación, principalmente orientadas a las características plurales de la investigación a partir de procesos de evaluación formativos, evolutivos y transparentes que incorporan indicadores cualitativos y situados que se orientan hacia la ciencia abierta y se basan en principios como la justicia, la equidad, la diversidad, la inclusión, la ética y la integridad. El Manifiesto de Bogotá hacia una ciencia abierta, democrática y socialmente relevante en América Latina traduce el paradigma de la evaluación responsable en una serie de principios rectores que orientan la transformación de los complejos científico-tecnológicos de la región hacia una perspectiva de justicia cognitiva, soberanía epistémica y bienestar colectivo. Los principios rectores son 11. Solo voy a detenerme en algunos. Los principios fundamentales son los siguientes. La justicia social es el primero, y la ética del conocimiento y el impacto ampliado. El segundo es la diversidad lingüística, por eso hablo en español, y cultural, como condición de inclusión epistémica. La tercera es el reconocimiento de la coproducción de conocimiento y del trabajo colectivo, como presentó nuestra colega también de Marruecos y otras. La cuarta es el derecho a participar del progreso científico y de los beneficios de que él resulte. Por eso estamos en contra de la privatización del conocimiento y de la comercialización del conocimiento. La ciencia debe ser para todos. La quinta refiere a la democratización del conocimiento y la soberanía digital y refiere al acceso abierto, libre y no comercial financiado con fondos públicos, especialmente los financiados por fondos públicos, porque sería un contrasentido que los fondos públicos sean privatizados. El sexto es el desarrollo y la sostenibilidad de infraestructuras abiertas, interoperables y cooperativas. La séptima es la construcción de sistemas de información académica inclusivos y representativos. Entre los principios rectores, la transformación de modelos de evaluación, está el octavo punto, que refiere a los sistemas de evaluación abiertos, participativos y principalmente contextualizados. El décimo es la evaluación con equidad de género, inclusión de diversidades y apoyo a trayectorias emergentes. Por último, la formación y la cultura de ciencia abierta como bien público y común, como ya se ha hablado aquí. Entonces, el 11avo es la formación crítica y las estratégicas pedagógicas, estrategias pedagógicas para arraigar la ciencia abierta como bien público y común, basado en la evaluación con relevancia social. Paso al siguiente rápido. Me iba a detener en el octavo, pero bueno, lo pueden ver ustedes luego, que es el de sistemas de evaluación abiertos, participativos y contextualizados. Podría hablar mucho más rápido, pero por respeto a los traductores, hablo lento. El 9, quería detenerme, pero también lo pueden ver solos, es el uso de indicadores cualitativos, como decía, la crítica a los rankings internacionales. Por más que, igual que Luciana Balboa, pertenezco a una universidad de ranking mundial, entre las mejores 500 del mundo, supuestamente según el QR, o al CONICET, el primer centro científico de América Latina. Aquí pueden ustedes escanear el manifiesto de Bogotá en inglés o en español, para que lo tengan, si no, en nuestra página. Y lo último que quiero decir, estas cuestiones que ya dijeron también nuestros compañeros, la valoración de la pluralidad, la transparencia, la relevancia social, las infraestructuras soberanas, etc. Y por último, lo último que quiero decir es la escuela de evaluadores, que es algo que venimos implementando desde el año 2024. Es una diplomatura superior en Claxo que estamos desarrollando en varias latitudes, también pensándola en África, en varios gobiernos, en Brasil y en otros lugares. Hemos hecho una escuela presencial en México, etc. Aquí tienen, next, please, next. También pueden escanear las características de la diplomatura con cada uno de las características del programa. Y con eso termino. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Thank you. Thank you. Can we switch back to the other slide deck? Next, I would like to welcome up Laurence L. Corey, Deputy Director of Open Research Data Departments at CNRS. Thank you. And let's see if we can advance.
Thank you all. Again, I will speak from a research performance organization perspective. I am Deputy Director of the Open Research Department at CNRS, and this department is in charge of the open science policy, including publication, infrastructure, storage, and high performance computing, and of course open research data. So this is something I have shown you earlier today, but I will focus on the individual evaluation of researchers regarding best practices and practices that are nowadays, I will say, the practices that are the usual practices. This Open Science Roadmap is available in French, English, and Spanish on this link, and it was released in November 2019. 2 years after, we had we took stock about what we were doing regarding the evolution of the assessment practices at CNRS. It's a long road. It began in 2016, and I will show you in the next slide that I will begin at DORA Manifesto, but it's not the only one, and maybe we will add the Manifesto of Bogota. So in 2012, that was the DORA Manifesto with 21 principles or recommendations, and these were coming after 10 years of great movement towards open access. So then you know about the Leiden Manifesto, and while we were working on these changes that we had to do in our institutions, the changes, as I said earlier, were coming from also the practices of the communities. As a department at the headquarters, we work with the 10 research disciplines that are in CNRS. So we work listening to the community of each discipline. There are not only 10 disciplines, but they are gathered into main disciplines. There's chemistry, biology, physics, nuclear physics, and computing and engineering, social science and humanities, and environment and ecology, and I always forget one. Universe science, going from Earth to the planets, and to the inside of the Earth also. So working with these, we hear what's happening on the field, and we listen to this. And this is about a virtuous circle, about listening to bottom up and doing the top down in a back and forth movement, so that we include the complete policies that we need to implement. So assessments is how practices of research are followed and rewarded. So the practices exist. In some disciplines, practices are different, but we have this movement going to as knowledge should be shared to the maximum and should go to public good again. So this work was beginning by going into each section of the committees that were assessing researchers. So there are 55 committees in the sections that they are called, and they gather every year and they assess researchers. So, and they change every 5 years. So this is a work that is an ongoing work and not non-ending work, because people will change, and we will again try to explain what are the policies and why they are made like this, and then the committees will assess. So in 2019, we had these 4 principles, so that each production should be written by the researchers themselves, not adding the whole list of publications, that all type of production and outputs can be assessed, so you can add or open source software, preprints, articles, and you don't need to say in what journals they are published. All production must be accessible freely online. So for doing this, we helped also researchers by including, of course, there is a repository, a preprint repository in France called HAL, something maybe you have heard about Monday with the overlay journals. But so we had the forms that the researcher has to fill in are automatically filled by, if they want to quote an article, it must be on the preprint repository, the open repository HAL. So researchers had to deposit their research production if they wanted it to be filled in their form. So it was not mandatory, but it was highly recommended. And it was not, these forms are not evaluation forms. These forms are annual forms that researchers fill in order to assess of what they are doing in their laboratory each year. Okay, so I will go through this timeline because I will, in 2019 we had these 4 principles. And in 2022, we co-organized with the Academy of Science in France and in the presidents of the European Union, when France was president of the European Union, an Open Science European Conference, where we had a panel associated to research assessment and the necessary evolution of research assessment. And then we signed COARA at the beginning in 2023. And then there was the Declaration of Barcelona speaking about open research information and how all the data and the research information should be open and accessible so that we can have trust in whatever we are using and what is online. So the other news that was released in December was that we at CNRS wanted to cut the access to the WOS, to which we had access since maybe the beginning, and this in order to assess that impact factor is not anymore needed and that we don't want to rely on data that are behind paywalls or programs that are behind paywalls. So this is an example of the new form that is that assesses research careers and research, and that is used to hire researchers. Every year there is a campaign for hiring researchers, a public campaign. So researchers, all contribution can be taken into account, and they have to themselves decide how they want to color their form to assess what they are doing. So they can choose to put the managing and collective responsibility. They can choose to speak about their work in science, but they can choose also to speak about how they were spreading their scientific outputs, and of course innovation and transfer, like always. And all what they will choose how much they want to put in any of these cases, and some cases can be empty. And they have already had a survey on this, and they have, and the HR have seen that indeed the researchers are complying to this new way of answering their form. What's more, every year CNRS releases a golden medal and some silver medals to people, and they are not obliged to be at CNRS, from researchers from France. And there is one from INSERM, which is a national, I'm just finishing, a national institute who had received the silver medal, and in her institute, for example, it's medical institute, they were surprised as she hadn't have any nature, science, or whatever high class journals between brackets. So what's important is that we had this help for our directory. The governance of CNRS, for example, the deputy CEO goes into each section and doesn't want to hear about impact factor. If somebody raises the word impact factor, then they know now it's a red flag. So yeah, this is all what I wanted to say as a beginning.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving along, I'm excited to invite up Mylene Deschines, Director of Ethics and Legal Affairs in Quebec. Apologies for my American pronunciations.
Fantastic. Thank you for the invitation. I want to thank especially the opportunity that we have to talk in our own language. So I'm going to be speaking in French. If you want to put your earphones, thank you very much again for offering us this possibility. That's really appreciated. So, au Québec, nous avons une approche à deux volets. Comme vous le savez, nous imposons le libre accès immédiat pour la recherche financée et nous finançons certains journaux numériques en voie de devenir des revues diamants. Mais au Canada, l'accès immédiat aux publications en libre accès n'est pas encore la norme. Dans ce contexte, chez nous, ça ne fonctionnera pas, le libre accès immédiat, si les chercheurs ne sont pas convaincus qu'il est dans leur intérêt de choisir le libre accès plutôt que la publication dans une revue prestigieuse. Il faut donc expliquer à quel point ça n'a aucun sens de payer pour des APC qui sont à des prix inacceptables. Il faut continuer à montrer que les revues en libre accès ne sont pas des revues de seconde classe. Et nous, on a un travail à faire pour s'assurer que l'accès libre en diamant, ça compte vraiment. Et là, je veux parler d'accès libre en diamant, que ce soit de publier dedans ou d'y contribuer, parce que si ce qu'on demande, c'est que la communauté scientifique participe à ça, il va falloir aussi qu'on fasse compter le fait de participer aux infrastructures, à l'évaluation des revues en diamant libre accès. J'ai une préoccupation et je vais vous montrer des chiffres. Je m'excuse si vous les avez déjà vus, mais ça me touche directement. Alors, il y a une recherche qui a été faite par des chercheurs du Québec, Université Concordia. Ils ont mené un survey et ils demandaient, est-ce que dans votre institution, au moment de... Je vais lire la question en anglais, je m'excuse, je change. But, do your institution tenure and promotion policy value researchers' engagement with open science practices? Donc, c'est open science, on s'entend. Et la réponse était, la moitié des gens ont dit « je ne sais pas ». Et le tiers ont dit « non ». Donc, c'est sûr que tant que j'ai ce genre de chiffres-là avec le libre accès, j'ai un problème. J'ai un problème parce que les gens ne sont pas convaincus, les chercheurs ne sont pas convaincus que ça vaut la peine. Donc, il faut que ça vaille la peine. Donc, qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire? Je pense qu'il faut vraiment s'avancer et accélérer cette question-là de la réforme de l'évaluation scientifique. Et je pense que toutes les agences de financement à qui je parle sont engagées là-dedans. On est, nous, engagés dans COARA parce qu'on ne peut pas faire ça seul, évidemment. Merci à COARA parce que ça nous a obligés à développer un plan d'action qui a plusieurs composantes. Et la science ouverte n'en est qu'un aspect, mais c'est un aspect très, 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 très important. Diverses actions peuvent être entreprises pour que vraiment la publication en libre accès compte vraiment. Vous savez, au cours d'un cycle de financement, il n'y a pas juste au moment de l'évaluation de la demande de financement qu'on peut dire des choses, qu'on peut rappeler aux chercheurs que certaines choses sont importantes. Donc, il faut bien sûr se pencher sur l'évaluation de la demande de financement, mais je vais vous donner d'autres exemples de moments où on peut rappeler que le libre accès est important. Je vous parle de 4 aspects sur lesquels nous, on travaille. Donc, 1, on a modifié nos rapports de recherche pour que dans les rapports de recherche, il y ait une ligne qui soit dédiée à écrire quelles ont été les publications en libre accès immédiat. Vous me direz, ce n'est pas grand-chose, mais ça oblige le chercheur à vraiment apporter cette information-là. Dans la première version, on avait même demandé quelle licence ils avaient utilisée. Mauvaise idée, parce que la plupart des chercheurs n'ont absolument aucune idée de quelles licences ont existé. En fait, le seul bon côté de ça, c'est que j'ai eu beaucoup de conversations avec des chercheurs qui ne réalisaient pas qu'ils cédaient leurs droits, tout simplement. Donc, mais bon, on a retiré cette demande-là. Le deuxième aspect, c'est le changement de culture concernant des nouvelles habitudes en matière d'évaluation scientifique. Vous savez, ça fait 15 ans, ou presque 15 ans que je travaille au Fonds de recherche du Québec, et le facteur d'impact H n'a jamais été sur nos grilles d'évaluation, jamais. Malgré ça, dans nos comités d'évaluation, il y a toujours quelqu'un, à un moment donné, qui soulève cette question-là. À tous les ans, on organise des webinaires pour expliquer nos exigences en matière de sciences ouvertes. Et j'ai toujours un étudiant qui lève la main en disant « Oui, mais moi, si je ne publie pas dans un journal à haut facteur d'impact, mon superviseur ne sera pas content. » Donc, je pense que c'est important que ce sont des habitudes qui sont bien ancrées. Puis il y a une partie de la responsabilité qui incombe aussi à la communauté scientifique. Quand on parle de libre accès diamant, on veut que la communauté scientifique s'approprie, on veut leur redonner une partie de ce pouvoir-là de gérer la dissémination scientifique, mais il faut qu'ils prennent les choses en main. Et donc, de ce côté-là, il y a vraiment un travail à faire ensemble. Avec les nouveaux modèles d'évaluation scientifique, où le facteur d'impact H n'est pas un raccourci, les évaluations prennent plus de temps. Donc, il faut qu'on accorde plus de temps au comité d'évaluation. Et c'est très important que le temps consacré à ce travail d'évaluation soit aussi reconnu par nous, les agences de financement, mais aussi pour la promotion. Troisième point, il m'en reste 3 et 4. Là. Troisième point, modifier le CV. On est tous en train de revoir les CV. Dans ce changement, il faut s'assurer que la publication en libre accès immédiat est une place importante et qu'on lui accorde aussi des points. Dans notre nouveau guide de rédaction, on a vraiment ajouté dans les exemples une ligne où on dit que des contributions et expériences qui adhèrent au concept de science ouverte au sens de la recommandation de l'UNESCO, par exemple la participation à une revue issue du milieu académique en sciences ouvertes, peut faire partie des choses qui sont évaluées favorablement. Dernier point, et là je vous avertis, s'il y a des chercheurs du Québec qui nous écoutent, je ne suis pas en train d'annoncer un changement, mais à quand la publication scientifique en libre accès dans nos critères de financement? Ça, c'est un autre élément. Vous savez, on demande à nos chercheurs de publier leurs travaux en libre accès immédiat, mais on pourrait peut-être aussi leur demander que ce soit intégré directement dans l'évaluation, en faire un vrai critère d'évaluation. Quand on amène cette idée-là, les chercheurs me disent « Oui, mais Mylène, là, tu m'obliges à payer des APC. » Et en fait, c'est ici que j'ai vraiment besoin des revues diamants, parce que je veux pouvoir dire à mes chercheurs « Non, il y a d'excellentes revues en libre accès diamant, va plutôt vers ces revues. » Je pense qu'on a un travail, par contre, à faire pour s'assurer qu'il n'existe pas de zones désertiques dans des domaines scientifiques donnés où il n'y a pas de revue en diamant. Et j'espère qu'au cours des prochaines étapes de travail qu'on fait, on pourra faire cette analyse-là pour être sûr que toutes les communautés scientifiques sont bien servies avec une offre qui leur permet de publier dans différents lieux. Je vous remercie beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Okay, we are moving ahead. Unfortunately, Nosisa Dubé had a family emergency, so is not able to join us online. But she's the director for reevaluation of the National Research Foundation in South Africa and co-chair of the Responsible Research Assessment Working Group of the Global Research Council, and Lydia has kindly offered to share her slides on her behalf. Thank you, Lydia.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So now you need to imagine me all in black. So, like Nosisa. I'll try to replace her, which is very difficult because she's a very knowledgeable person on research assessment. And however, her work is not unfamiliar to me because Science Europe is also a member of the activities of the Global Research Council, which is what I'm going to present briefly now. So I'm stepping on her behalf. Can we have her slides, please, on the screen? Oh, that's my computer. Managed. Thank you. Okay, so what I'm presenting here is continuing with the funders approach that Milene very nicely initiated. This is an activity that is conducted with a lot of research councils from all over the world in the framework of the Global Research Council. So there is working group was created several years ago based on a background knowledge that I will show you in a moment, with the idea to members of the research councils to share the understanding, their practices, come up with solutions, and to whatever extent possible, coordinate actions for the reform of research assessment exercises. These research assessment exercises go along the lines of DORA, COARA, and these other initiatives that we have heard so far in this session. The working group is co-chaired by Nosisa Dube herself. You may not see, but she's on this corner. And Sean McQuirk from the Natural Sciences Engineering Research Council in Canada. And together manage a group of 25 members from 23 countries all over the world. As you can see, this is a very important initiative that offers an excellent platform to coordinate the efforts of research funders. The work of this working group is based on a series of commissioned studies, among them the Rory Institute that has been mentioned by Momita, by the DORA declaration, and also by a group of volunteers that they dedicated to find good practices from all over the world and put them together in that paper you have on the screen on the changing role of funders in responsible research assessment. This, I think, 2022, but there are still examples, very good examples, that you can use as a reference, as a model, and you have here all the QR codes to reach those publications. Of course, the presentation will be available after the conference. So the work of the responsible research assessment tries to find incentives to promote what we call positive research behaviors. That means those behaviors that Milene also referred to, and Laurence, about getting practices that go away from journals in high impact factor necessarily, while focusing on the intrinsic quality of the research that is to be published. The guidelines that this group develops also intend to be broad enough to reflect the diverse nature of the different disciplines and different characteristics of maybe regions in the world, etc. Also put the focus on rewards, not only of the classic publications or books, but also research data, protocols, etc. Because the type of research outputs facilitated clearly by IT is broadening almost at the speed that we talk. So there is not just one product anymore to be valued in the career of a researcher or an institution. Last but not least, it tends to develop supportive measures to make possible in an ambience where the researcher can flourish and where the researcher can be positively influenced, let's put it like that, towards these practices away from the classic publications. Very quickly, because I'm not going to go into detail into this, but this working group has developed a series of guiding principles, governance and strategy, and process and methodology. Some of them are very similar to the ones that Judith presented. If we go in detail, you will see that. But it, broadly speaking, is about equality, diversity, and inclusion, is about responsible approaches to research assessment. Again, not going into detail here, but you can see that a mapping of several organizations that have provided their examples and what dimension they are stronger. Just an illustration of what you can find in those papers. In moving towards a collaboration action, there's established a collaboration with DORA, established a collaboration with Science Europe to propose a guide for funders that will see the light, hopefully, in 2026. Let me put it like this. Oh, okay, sorry, not this one, back. So in 2026, we will have this publication that will be available, of course, publicly, so you will be able to look at it. And I hope that this will help research funding organizations, virtually governments, to show a good way forward to reform research assessment. I have not yet mentioned Diamond Open Access, but I will do it now in my last minute, because everything that this guide proposes is very relevant to Diamond Open Access. It actually affects any system of publication, including Diamond, and is absolutely something to follow. Thank you very much for your attention.